Now we get close to the 2015 NBA draft. With it being the beginning of the offseason for the NBA, you officially get into the stupid season, similar to the NFL, what have you. And basically, what I mean by the stupid season is where you start to hear about teams just really wanting to do ridiculously dumb dick shit. You hear all types of wild, crazy, just illogical rumors. And, a lot of times, frankly, there's meat on those bones. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And oftentimes you just left wondering, what the fuck are they thinking? What the hell is going on here? And now, as we're getting only a couple days away from the 2015 NBA draft, I've officially got the leading candidate for the king of stupidity in terms of off-season rumors for the NBA. And that is all this buzz now about apparently George Karl trying to convince others within the Sacramento Kings organization, up to and including the owner, that the time has come to part with star center DeMarcus Cousins for the good of the organization, for the good of the team, and what have you. That they'll be better off long-term without somebody like a DeMarcus Cousins. And you hear talk about teams like the Lakers desperately wanting DeMarcus Cousins. Perhaps a team like a Boston Celtics might want to kick the tires on this. And it just fucking stupid. There are reasons that certain teams and certain organizations consistently find themselves in the same types of positions every single year. A team like the San Antonio Spurs finds themselves in the types of positions they do, meaning the playoffs, each and every single year because of how they run things as an organization. On the flip side of that, you have certain organizations like the Sacramento Kings that are years past from being relevant, years away from being relevant again, and consistently find themselves in the positions that they're in because of dumb dick shit like this. Now let's talk about DeMarcus Cousins here for a second. You're talking about their 5th overall pick from 2010 out of Kentucky. A guy who won't be 25 until August. So a guy, in theory, that has not even entered into the peak of his career. A guy who's been a Sacramento King since day one, has been the best player on that franchise over the course of the past 5 years. And what are we talking about with DeMarcus Cousins? We're talking about a legit center with legit game. This past season, he averaged over 24 points and 12 rebounds a game. A big man who plays like a big man, the rarest of rare commodities in today's NBA. A guy who can fill it up on the offensive end, a guy who can hit the glass, a guy who averages almost 2 blocks a game, and he's not even 25 years old yet. Playing on a team where he's the only player that really fucking matters. He's the only player you have to game plan for. He's the only player that opposing teams have to worry about. So all the while, he has to do all of this in spite of the fact that the supporting cast around him completely and totally freaking sucks. Now, I know some of the buzz about DeMarcus Cousins can be that he's a stat sheeter, meaning a guy that puts up a bunch of meaningless stats on a bad team. And to be fair, he's on a bad team, so he can jack up a lot of bad shots. He can be selfish. He can be a stat sheet filler because somebody's got to do it. There is something to that argument. I don't totally dismiss that. And, when I see a guy that's a legit center shooting less than 50% from the field, that bothers me. That bothers me a lot. That means he's a high-volume shooter and an ineffective low-post scorer. He is a stat sheeter on a bad team. And then you hear that he's difficult to deal with and he's not much of a leader, and maybe he's not much of a leader. Not every great player is a tremendous leader. However, does he really have much to lead? And is there really much of a purpose for him to have to lead? Furthermore, as far as difficult to deal with, maybe he is. But frankly, what star player in the NBA isn't difficult to deal with? Ask the Cavaliers or the Heat if LeBron James is always the easiest to deal with. Ask the Lakers if Kobe Bryant and Shaquille O'Neal were easy to deal with. Ask the Chicago Bulls, for Christ's sakes, if Michael Jordan, and to a lesser degree, Scottie Pippen were easy to deal with. Magic Johnson wasn't always the easiest to deal with. A lot of these star players can be a pain in the ass. And that's part of the territory that goes along with having these type of guys. Is it's a lot of times not about X's and O's, it's about managing the Jimmys and Joes and the fucking egos. So he probably is difficult to deal with. But frankly, if you were stuck in a city like Sacramento playing for a third-rate organization like the Kings, and you're sitting here and doing all of this and you see the crap that's around you, wouldn't you find yourself a little bit difficult to deal with? I'm just saying. And now that the Sacramento Kings have brought in a Hall of Fame coach like George Karl, people are sitting there and saying, George Karl knows what he's doing. He has an earned reputation. He has a pedigree of success. He has a background that establishes he knows what the fuck he's doing. And if he doesn't want DeMarcus Cousins, then maybe there's a reason he doesn't want DeMarcus Cousins. So since it's George Karl and he's a Hall of Fame coach with all these victories and everything else, then that means he's got to be right, and it's time for DeMarcus Cousins to go. To which I say, bullshit. To which I say, if the Sacramento Kings do this, they are as stupid as we believe them to be. And they will continue to be as stupid as I believe them to be for the foreseeable future. As far as the George Karl shit, my thing about a so-called great coach is that a great coach, in theory, should be able to thrive in any environment, be able to make the most out of any situation. If George Karl is so good and so confident in his abilities, and he has such a pedigree and reputation and a history behind him, then shouldn't he embrace the challenge and the opportunity of coaching a DeMarcus Cousins, not shy away from it? If a guy like DeMarcus Cousins is difficult to deal with for George Karl, could that be in any way, shape, or form that George Karl himself is a bit difficult to deal with? This is not a guy that is foreign to having conflicts between player and coach. See Sean Kemp, see Gary Payton, see Ray Allen. Need I continue? I mean, in this whole thing of, well, if George Karl doesn't like him, then he does need to go. How'd that work out for Milwaukee years back when they traded away Ray Allen? I'm just saying. This whole notion about George Karl and this and that, Hall of Fame coach and all of that. How many NBA titles has this guy won? Oh, that's right. The answer is 0. When was the last time George Karl made it to the NBA Finals? It was 1996. I had just finished my freshman year of fucking high school. So all this talk about, if George Karl wants it, it's got to be the right way. No, fuck it doesn't. I'm not saying the guy's a bad coach. Most certainly his background, his reputation, his history suggests that he's not. But this great champion and all-time great coach, he isn't either. And he's got the lack of NBA championships to prove it. And again, I will emphasize, if he was that good, he would welcome the opportunity to coach a DeMarcus Cousins. You would think he would be smart enough in a game clearly lacking in potentially dominant big men. You have one of the rarest of rare commodities in the NBA. One of the true few guys that can be, when guided and pointed in the right direction, one of the truly few dominant, legit centers in today's NBA. A guy that can be the best center in the NBA. And you want to get rid of him? For all the talk you want to talk about, he's a stat sheeter, a stat filler on a bad team. He's not much of a leader. He's difficult to deal with. And he's part of the problem with why the Kings don't get better. The Kings sucked for years before he got there. They will suck for years after he would leave. They've sucked with him. But a big reason for why they have sucked with him has absolutely nothing to do with freaking DeMarcus Cousins. This, to me, is a clear case of an organization scapegoating away from their own stupidity and incompetence, especially when it comes to the NBA draft. How many players in DeMarcus Cousins' situation would be that successful, or as successful as DeMarcus Cousins has been as a player, considering the scrubs that have been put fucking around him? Who in the hell else could succeed in the Western Conference with that sorry-ass, scrub-ass Sacramento Kings roster? And let's go back to the draft. Remember 2011? You've got DeMarcus Cousins from the previous draft, so you need to build around him, right? So how do you do that? You go get Jimmer Fredette from fucking BYU. Oh, Sacramento's going to love the white boy that can shoot, except he couldn't fucking play at the NBA level. And all the while, they took Fredette with the 10th overall pick. With the next pick, the Golden State Warriors took Klay Thompson. In 2012, the Sacramento Kings decided with the 5th overall pick, we just got to have Thomas Robinson, a guy without a clear-cut NBA position. And all the while, in a game that was clearly transitioning, has been for years, and continues to transition more to being a perimeter and guard-dominated league, they passed up Damian Lillard, who went to the next pick with the Portland Trailblazers. Then, of course, the next 2 years, they take Ben McLemore, because that's going to be a superstar, and Nick Stauskas, do I even need to fucking go there? Over the last 4 years, you've surrounded a guy like DeMarcus Cousins with 2 guys that aren't even on your freaking roster anymore. Now, mind you, one was a top 10 pick, picked 1 slot ahead of Klay Thompson. The other guy was a top 5 pick, picked 1 slot ahead of Damian Lillard. And then you follow it up by taking Ben McLemore and Nick Stauskas. How about instead of trying to focus on trading DeMarcus Cousins, you actually build around the fucking guy and see what the hell you've got? This whole notion of the Kings need to rebuild, they've needed to rebuild for years. They never properly built around one of the best commodities to build around in the NBA, and DeMarcus fucking Cousins. This whole thing, well, they could trade him off and get these picks and those picks. What the fuck difference does it make? These incompetent assholes don't know what the hell they're doing. And until proven otherwise, until we see what he actually does in the draft, we can assume Vlade Divac doesn't either. This Sacramento Kings organization is a complete fucking mess and a total damn joke. They're going to get a new arena soon. They sit there. Their old GM fires a guy in Malone who Cousins really liked. So that way he can go to Denver, where the D'Alessandro guy ends up going to Denver himself. They bring in George Karl, clearly an ownership hire. Never mind, you're not worried apparently about whether or not him and the star player can actually coexist, and you don't particularly care about it either. You know, hopefully the Kings are smart enough to just sit there and say, hey, let's not get fucking stupid here. Let's just play out the draft, the 6th overall pick, take somebody like Emmanuel Mudiay, get a point guard, somebody that can create off the dribble, create opportunities, somebody that can actually be fucking good and pan out. And let's see how much better this team can be built around him and DeMarcus Cousins. I mean, for crying out loud. You know, if you want to talk about trading somebody, you know, maybe it's worth exploring trading Rudy Gay, see what you can get potentially. Maybe you'll have a team that can take on his bigger contract, that thinks he could be a piece that can help take him to that next level. This is the same Sacramento Kings team, apparently, that has a huge fascination for bringing in a Rajon Rondo in free agency. So let me get this straight. DeMarcus Cousins is so difficult to deal with, and he lacks in leadership skills, that you're so desperate to get rid of him, that you'd be okay with bringing in a fucking Rajon Rondo. You want to talk about somebody who's prickly as a personality, somebody who's not much of an effective leader, somebody that's incredibly difficult to begin with and deal with. Ding dong, dumb dicks. Did you see what he did for Dallas after he got traded there? He was so bad they made up an injury to not play his ass anymore. Fucking Kings trading DeMarcus Cousins. They would be that stupid, and they are that stupid. Well, hopefully, even their stupidity doesn't get in their own fucking way. Trading away a big-time center. It's not even 25. Hasn't even entered the peak of his freaking career. No wonder the Kings are a joke. No wonder Shaq called them the Sacramento Queens. Freaking idiots.